agony of surrender. It's very challenging for most of us, isn't it? We saw a very human side of the man Jesus. Surrendering to what is. We might see it coming. Makes it even more challenging, doesn't it? Like Jesus. Perhaps it's a relationship that's ending, and we know we have to walk through all of that to get through it. We're dreading it. We don't want to. We want it to be different. We want it to be over. But we must go through. Perhaps it's a diagnosis. We don't want to deal with it, but we must go through. Perhaps some of my athletes, you're in a race, in a run. You're tired. You want to quit. Jesus wanted to quit. He didn't want to finish. Perhaps it's work, and it's a project you've been working on for a long time. And, your folks aren't really cooperating anymore. It's challenging. It's difficult. You want to quit. Want to be done. Want it over. All of these things that we go through on a regular basis. A very human experience, yes? And yet something won't let us stop. We keep going. We know intellectually that we can't not finish. We know we must accept what is. We must surrender. We must simply surrender to what is in front of us and take the next step. Our series this month is all about forgiveness. And we're using this series of Jesus Christ Superstar for our musical inspiration for the stories of the last few days of Jesus' life. And my talk today is Sacred Agony. Take this cup away. As we look at Jesus' prayers in the Garden of Gethsemane. The Garden of Gethsemane was a very special place to him and his disciples where they frequently went to pray and to have meetings and so forth. And so this is where he went. And Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. He's also the author of The Science of Mind that we teach from. And he said, we have no record of Jesus ever asking God to do anything except where he said in the garden, Father, take away this cup from me, but thy will be done, not mine. Holmes goes on to say, when Jesus healed people and told them to get up and walk, he didn't pray for them to be able to get up and walk. He exercised an authority that was a result of his communion with the Spirit. He commanded, right? Lazarus, get up. Blind man, see. Lame, walk. He commanded. He didn't pray that maybe if God found it in good favor, that maybe that would happen. He commanded. So why have a beseeching prayer? Was that beseeching? Why have that level of angst and anger and beseeching in this prayer? Why go there at that point? Why not just command Judas to step away? Why not just have the guards get lost? Why not have a big old fog come in real heavy and Jesus just disappear? I mean, Moses had 10 plagues on Egypt and the pharaohs. Look how that changed history. We don't know. Other than we know that this is part of the story of the last days of Jesus. It's also part of our story. It's also part of our human experience of what we go through when we are dealing with that divine duality of our humanness and our spirit. And that was what we witnessed there, wasn't it? That power, that angst, the process that he went through. That was his very human person dealing with this sacred calling that he had. As metaphysicians, we are taught to pray like Jesus prayed. exercising the power of our word to direct the spiritual laws of our life. But how many times do we instead take this beseeching attitude of praying to something outside of ourselves? To handle it, to do something, to fix it, to make it go away. Or perhaps we're demanding that it be done a certain way, our way, my way, not the best way, not God's way. The more I worked with this story this week, the more humanness I found in it, my own story, and how had experiences and situations in my own life where I want it over. I want it done. I want it to magically disappear. Oh, wise and wonderful Oz, make it go away. Right? Don't we all wish we had little ruby red slippers we could click once in a while to make things just disappear that we don't want to accept, surrender to? I felt like Jesus when he said, then I was inspired, now I'm sad and tired. You ever felt that way? All fired up and inspired and ready to go on a project or something or some life event, and then you get in and I'm tired and I'm very sad by it. And I don't want to finish. I don't want to finish. I've certainly felt that way. Again, in this human scene, in this garden scene, we see the very human Jesus. We see it powerfully portrayed in that song. It was long, and I was going to cut it at 3 when he first surrendered in the floor, but I thought that last part was so powerful with the expression of the angst that he felt. So powerful to the message. We can tell he knows what's coming, and that makes it even more difficult. The betrayal, the arrest, the persecution, the death. When we resist a situation, it grows stronger, doesn't it? Because our resistant energy is feeding it and making it stronger. Ernest tells us that we charge every condition positively or negatively based on our acceptance or resistance to it. Our beliefs, opinions, judgments energize the condition. That's why gratitude is so powerful. Our energy of being grateful energizes more to be grateful for. Negative resistance makes things more difficult, makes the situation more difficult, bigger, more hard to handle, more powerful. The story, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, say that when he entered the garden, he became sad and depressed. That doesn't sound like our boy, does it? Sad and depressed. And then from there, we see him go into the beseeching prayer of, take this cup away. And he's in resistance, a little anger in there, until finally he surrenders. Finally, he surrenders. It's sort of like the 5 steps of grief that we talk about through grief counseling. Moving through those. He had to move through that process, a very human process. Now, one of the interesting components about these stories in all 3 books is the disciples. Did you notice they were all asleep? Well, if you remember back last week when Reverend Lee was talking about the Passover feast in the upper room where Jesus was with the disciples and they were having their dinner, and he was still teaching them, right? He was still teaching them things. And one of the things that he said to them was, Satan wants to sift all of you like wheat. Satan wants to sift all of you like wheat. And what he was talking about was that negative thinking would separate them as a group. These guys have been together for 3 years, following Jesus all up and around the countryside. He's their leader. And he knew what was coming, and there was going to be no leader. So he knew that they were going to have their things, right? A little infighting and separation and all of those things that happen when a leader leaves and the group is left on their own, and then someone rises as the new leader. So he warned them of that. When he goes deeper in the garden, gets ready in the garden, then goes in deeper, he asked his disciples to watch and pray with him. We talk here sometimes about holding the high watch, and that's just holding in prayer. And so he asked the disciples to do that. And he said, may that you may not enter into temptation. So again, bringing that same message from the Passover meal into his prayer work there in the garden, not enter into temptation. So he goes off and prays and leaves them there praying. He comes back and they're all asleep, every last one of them. He's like, guys, come on. I ask you to watch and pray with me 1 hour. Come on. Can't you stay awake? He says, I'm going to go pray again. This time, pray that you may not enter into temptation, for the spirit is willing and ready, but the flesh is weak. You ever heard that? That was a Jesus thing. So he goes away again to pray, asking them to please stay awake, watch, and pray with me. I need your support. It's like a practitioner holding high watch for us or holding us in prayer. We need their support. Why did he keep falling asleep? Why does he keep talking about temptation? I mean, this he's on the brink of a very painful situation in his own life, really dramatic. And he's talking to them about pray and watch and don't be led into temptation. Temptation is when we face something or someone that causes us to have a desire to do something wrong or unwise. Mine are usually unwise choices. I don't know about you. Not so much wrong, but unwise. Jesus knew that the disciples would be tempted to intervene in the coming events. He knew what was coming. He didn't want them getting violent. He didn't want them pulling swords. He didn't want them attacking. He knew what was his to do. So he wanted them what we might call prayed up and centered so that they were in a good place and not going to make some dumb decisions. So resist temptation. When he returned the third time from his prayer, they were asleep again. Third time, sound asleep. This time, he said, sleep and rest. The hour has come. So we can feel, even in that comment, his surrender. We can feel his surrender in that comment. There's so much to forgive in this Garden of Gethsemane scene, these prayers. I think he probably found some forgiveness for himself, for what he did and didn't do, the choices that he made along the way. If I hadn't turned over those tables in the temple, they might not be after me. They might not be so mad. If I hadn't done quite so many miracles, they might not be so mad. He probably found some forgiveness for himself, some grace. I think he probably forgave Judas in the garden before it ever happened. I think he forgave the Pharisees and the Sadducees for their trickery and all that they did to him. I think he forgave the disciples for sleeping and for the ultimate betrayals that came forth after that. You know what else? I think he forgave God. I think in those prayers, in that surrender in the garden, he found forgiveness for God. This one shows him pretty angry. The reading is not quite this dramatic, but I can still see that human side of him, my human side, getting mad. We've all been mad at God, right? At some point or the other, we've all been mad at God. So I think Jesus found his forgiveness there also. Most of us get mad at God when we can't understand why good things happen to bad people. bad things happen to me, people I love, around the world. I mean, come on, we talk about God being all good. How can he let bad things happen? How can she let bad things happen? How can this infinite power and presence and intelligence let these bad things happen? Why isn't life just a bowl of cherries every day? I mean, come on. Must I struggle? Well, I came across 5 common explanations from philosophy and theology as to why bad things happen. Would you like to hear them? The first is free will. God has granted us the ability to make choices freely, yes? Bad things can happen when we misuse our free will to harm ourselves or others. God respects human autonomy and allows us to exercise our choices even if they lead to negative consequences. We're at the effect of the law of cause and effect. The second is the problem of evil. This is a philosophical dilemma. Some argue that suffering and evil are necessary for spiritual growth and development of virtues such as compassion, empathy, and courage. You may have heard it called Earth School. You've heard that term, right? In this view, adversity provides opportunities for individuals to demonstrate resilience and moral character. Now, in the science of mind, we believe evil is an experience and not an entity, and that it will disappear when we stop choosing destructive methods. Imagine, just use that powerful imagination. Everybody stops competing, stops judging, lets go of anger, has forgiven all, doesn't hold a grudge, doesn't want to take anything from anybody else. It'd be a pretty peaceful moment, wouldn't it? Is it possible? We pray it is. We pray that it is. The third one is mysterious ways. We don't always understand God's purpose. Would you agree? God's ways are often mysterious, and what appears as suffering and injustice in our perspective may serve a higher purpose in the bigger scheme of life. We can't always see, even in our own manifestations, right? We want it now, but a lot of things have to happen that we have no knowledge or control over that need to occur first to allow that to become in alignment with us and come to us. We can't always see the big scheme of life, the big scheme of everything, the big picture. This explanation emphasizes humility and trust in God's wisdom. The fourth is the fall and original sin, the story of Adam and Eve and their disobedience, introducing cause and effect into the world. From this perspective, human suffering is a consequence of humanity's separation from God. And number 5 is redemption and hope. And many religious traditions teach that suffering is not the end of the story. Through faith, perseverance, and acts of love and kindness, individuals can find redemption, meaning, and hope, even in the midst of suffering. It's a belief in the afterlife, a belief in a better life in heaven. I'll get my rewards in heaven. I'm suffering here, but I'll get my rewards in heaven. That's the redemption and hope. Whichever one of these resonates with you, whichever one you believe, or something else, some other belief that you may have, ultimately the question of why God permits suffering, it's a mystery. We won't know until we get there, right? We really won't know why. These 5 ideas can offer us insights, they can offer us perspectives, but it comes down to what you believe. Many of us have struggled with this idea and will continue to struggle with this idea because I don't know that it's truly answerable. It's what we believe. For me, it comes down to my faith. It comes down to my faith in that which is greater than I am and a whole lot wiser than I am. Because I can't know. But I trust this divine presence, this infinite power and intelligence to know what it's doing. I can't create a rose. I can't manufacture oxygen. I can't change my DNA. Spirit knows. It's my personal surrender to the infinite all God. Once I realized my role in all things that I had blamed God for, why did you let that happen? Why did you let that happen? When I recognized my role in all of that, it was easy to forgive myself, God, and everybody else involved. Ernest Holmes says, necessity demands that we forgive if we would be forgiven. When we forgive, holding no condemnation, judging no one, then our consciousness becomes a mirror reflecting that greater consciousness, which is the mind of God and the will of love. This is a story of sacred agony of Jesus. He didn't like what he knew was coming. We don't always like what we know is coming. He surrendered anyway. He forgave himself, his betrayer, his disciples, and everyone who had or would persecute him. I think in his surrender in the garden, he also forgave God, and he said yes to the divine plan. We see him emerge from the garden, more of his true self. He continued to try and help and encourage the disciples. He entered the garden depressed and sad, and emerged ready to face what was coming, empowered almost. Whenever we're experiencing agony, pain, or suffering, we too can stop and pray and forgive. If you would like to learn more about these principles or get a recap of today's talk, I invite you to sign up for our Mindful Monday newsletter. Reverend Lee and I create those each week and send them out Monday morning as a recap on the talk that you can then use throughout the week to begin to embody these principles in your own life and to use the principles and practices of the science of mind to transform your life as well. Your spiritual practice for this week is once again forgiveness. Go to your own inner garden and pray. Surrender to what is, whether it's something in the past, something you're facing right now, or maybe something you fear in the future. Choose to forgive it all, including yourself and God, if there's any blame in there, and turn fresh towards what's next and what's new for you. Forgiveness frees the field, and it frees our energy to focus then on that new, to energize that new to come forward in powerful ways. This week, surrender to what is and forgive what was. We all have moments of doubt and uncertainty. Yet in the gardens of our souls, we can find the courage to surrender to that divine, trusting that God's love and purpose transcends our understanding, that which is greater than we are. And like Jesus' example, we can find courage to surrender our fears and our doubts, to just let them go. Let them go and trust in the transformative power of divine love. So this week, remember, even in our darkest moments, when things look their worst, we're never alone. Never alone, for the spirit of love and grace reside within each one of us, always. And so it is. Any questions or comments? It's your turn this morning.
Good morning. That was wonderful, Reverend Jill. The thing about this cancer stuff, I was pondering about your theories of what bad things happen to good people. Cancer came to mind, and I lost a couple friends this week.
Sorry.
So, can you enlighten me on that? Because I couldn't find any of your 5 theories.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Cancer is an ugly dis-ease that has invaded our species for some reason. There's a lot of theories about that. A lot of it comes back to mind-body experience. And when we lose someone with that terrible disease and we've seen them suffer, it's heart-wrenching. It is agony. And that process is all of those things that we saw with the agony and the anger and the grief and eventually the release and the surrender, moving through that process. Going back to these things, it's probably more the problem of evil, believing that we've got to be in earth school and learn this lesson through something was probably the closest one of those 5 in that. But we any sort of disease, whether it's cancer or a sore throat, is, it's like, why me? Why did I have to get sick? What's going on here? Did I call this on myself? And all of those things. And no, we don't believe that we ever actively call in something to our bodies to make us ill or diseased. But we do find that within those, there are many graces and there are many healings that happen. Even if the cancer itself is not healed, many other things are healed in that process. And it may be that which was necessary to cause these other healings to happen. Sorry for your loss. Anyone else? What, two over here? Thank you.
If God is everything, why do we have to forgive God?
That's in us. God didn't care.
That's our self-pity, or what
Um,
is it?
well, forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about ourselves and who we are blaming for how we're feeling, or someone did something. Well, someone did something to us, and we're holding on to that, which means we're keeping our energy on that. So if we think God did something to us and we have unforgiveness, then we're holding that block to anything else in our life. So we've got something in the way of the livingness through us.
Okay.
So, maybe you need to forgive. I know you all have beloved dogs. Maybe your dog has an accident and you have to forgive them. So it's whatever the forgiveness is. It's not that God needs it. It's not that anybody else needs it. Usually, a lot of times when we are holding unforgiveness, the other party doesn't even know that. And I would say the same would be true of God in that case. God doesn't know we're not forgiving, but the forgiveness is for us. It's not for God.
Okay. So it's an earthly thing.
It's an earth thing. It's an earthling thing.
All right. And Valerie's question, we're dealing with cancer, and that is a pervasive and a nasty disease, obviously. And you said we shouldn't resist situations, and I assume that's from the metaphysical or the spiritual standpoint. But is cancer a transition between spiritual and physical, and we resist the physical part of it, or what?
I don't agree with that idea of resisting cancer. I don't agree with the idea of imagine little laser beams knocking out each and every one of your little cancer cells. I just don't. I don't follow that line of thinking about it, that we're doing a battle against cancer. Because I think anything we resist persists. I think anything we battle against, we're putting our energy to. My treatment for anyone going through a chemo is This is the power and presence of God as infinite intelligence, infusing your body, flowing through each and every cell of your body, and empowering it to do its perfect right work of healing you. We're not fighting anything. You're in a normal, natural state of health and healing, wholeness. It's just healing to be revealed, that's all. Did you have some? No? Okay. Anyone else? Diane.
I can remember as a little girl going to vacation Bible school and being told that not forgiving is like you're the person holding the anger and the unforgiveness, that it poisons the vessel that holds it, not the person that you pour it on. And that's been a universal thought for most religions, including Jesus and Christianity, that it's toxic to hold on to that unforgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. So taking that one step more metaphysical, could his request of take this cup away from me be asking God to forgive, help him forgive, so that he would no longer be poisoned by his own unforgiveness? Wow. Anyone else? One more. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here today. And I would invite you to join me in a prayer this morning as we go within. How good it is that we have this time in community to be together in the one, in that infinite presence and power, that one life that is God, that which is whole, perfect, and complete, that which is infinite love, pressed down to overflowing in, through, and as all of its creation, that which loves so much it knows nothing outside of love. It knows nothing outside of itself. And itself is expressed in, through, and as all of its creation. And I am one with that which is created. I am a manifestation of this divine loving presence. And as such, those qualities are my qualities. I am that infinite love. I am that wisdom and intelligence. And as I know this of myself, I know that for each and every one of us gathered here today, whether in the room, online, or listening later, knowing that we are connected, not separate in any way. There is no time and space separation. We are one, always and all time, in all consciousness. And so from this place of oneness, I speak my word for and about each and every one of us, knowing that as we surrender it up, whatever it might be, and let it go, and simply forgive ourselves, each other, and all, that we set loose such love on our planet that the vision that we had earlier of no war, no competition, no fighting, no anger, no angst is realized. That we simply become the love we have come to be, whole, perfect, and complete in its manifestation in, through, and as each one of us. I know for anyone that has anything on their heart today, as they lift it into the consciousness of this prayer, that we as a community surround them, that desire, with our love, with our joy and our peace, knowing the full manifestation of it. Whatever needs to be healed is revealed. Whatever information needs to come is received easily. Whatever is necessary, we receive it now. And it is with a grateful heart filled with gratitude, thanksgiving, joy, peace, and love that I just simply release this prayer into the action of law, knowing that it's done. It's so. And we affirm this truth together by saying, and so it is.